Have you heard of the Grey Witch?
Who hasn't? Locals have been going on about her since those hikers disappeared last month.
I heard she stays in the forest, floats through the trees looking for people to pick on at night.
No, not at night. She only comes out on foggy days.
Well, why's that?
So you can't see her, but you can still hear her whispering through the mist.
No, you've got it all wrong. She lives in a cabin at the foot of the mountain. She doesn't chase you, she lures you in. You have to go to her.
Well, someone ought to go out there and find her then. See what all the fuss is about, you know?
Pass. I'm good.
Then I guess we'll never know.
Fine by me. So, what other spooky stuff do they talk about out here?
All right, welcome back to the third and final installment of this series in partnership with Epidemic Sound. I promise this is the last time I'll make you watch that intro, and in this one I want to walk you through my sound design process. So go through the different steps and stages that I go through on every video I make. But first, I want to take a quick minute to tell you about the sponsor of this video, which is of course Epidemic Sound. Epidemic is without a doubt the best place to get sound effects for your videos. It's a seemingly endless library of high quality sound effects. Pretty much anything you could possibly want is in there somewhere. And even with it being such a massive repository, their extensive tagging system makes it easy to find whatever you're looking for. So when I'm looking for footsteps, I can easily sort out to find the ones that are just running, the ones that are just walking, find different types of ground and surfaces that they could be walking on, and find exactly what I'm looking for. And the same goes for any other kind of sound as well. When I'm looking for a cool drone or whoosh to add some atmosphere to the background of a project, I can easily sort out to those different categories and find exactly what it is I'm looking for. I've been using Epidemic for the past few years. It's been my go-to source for all of my sound effects since then, and I cannot recommend it enough. So if you want to try it out for yourself, there's both a personal plan and a commercial plan, and you can use the link in the description of this video to get a 30-day free trial of either one, and also to let them know that I sent you. Moving on, the first step once I've finished up the edit and I'm ready to move on to sound design is to sort out the music, the voiceover, anything that's already on the timeline. This could mean balancing out the volume of the music throughout the edit, fading tracks in and out, adding EQ to voices to make them sound a little more rich and full. That's one we talked about in the first video, which you can watch right up here. Anything that's already on the timeline, I want to sort that out, make it sound correct before I start adding in additional sound effects. So once I've got that sorted out, I'll then log on to Epidemic and start searching for whatever sound effects I might need for this project. And it's really that simple. I just go on, type in what I'm looking for, start using those tags to narrow down the search, and just sift for a really long time until I find exactly what it is I'm looking for. The reality is there's a gazillion sound effects out there for you to choose from, so the process of finding exactly what it is you're looking for is gonna be a long one with a lot of sorting and sifting. But through that sorting and sifting, you'll also find other sound effects that you like and that you want to consider using for a different project down the line, or maybe even for the one that you're currently working on. You can then add those new finds to a sound effects library, and as you do more work and take on more projects, that library will grow. And mine's been growing for the past like 5 or 6 years now, and it's gotten to the point that I actually don't have to go search for sound effects that frequently. I have most of what I need already in there somewhere. Once I've gathered some of the sound effects I can think of that I might need off the top of my head, I'll start chucking some of them onto the timeline, starting out with ambient tracks. Ambience is basically just the background noise from the environment that the scene takes place in, and I'm usually combining several different tracks on the timeline to create an accurate, thorough, and immersive ambient sound. I'm also gradually fading these tracks in and out so that the ambience changes throughout the video to match changes in setting. For example, the intro to this video starts out with some night ambience like insects, wind, which then changes to forest ambience, raindrops, wind in the trees, branches rustling, birds in the background. That then changes to this hilltop ambience, which is basically just a lot of wind. And then we switch that back to the forest ambience and finally end back on that nighttime ambience. And all of those are gradually fading in and out of each other throughout that edit. Once I've got that ambience all sorted out, I'll move on to Foley. And I call this Foley. It's technically not Foley because Foley you have to record yourself in a Foley studio, but basically just detail sounds like a twig breaking, someone's footsteps on the ground, a jacket rustling, little details that you can see in the shot. There's not too much to talk about here. It's really just a matter of finding the right sound to match the visual, chucking it onto the timeline, and these kinds of sounds will usually represent the majority of the individual sounds that you have in your project. So we finished up ambience and Foley, and the final kind of third pillar of sound effects that I'll add to my project is atmosphere. And these are abstract sounds that wouldn't actually appear on camera, but are just added in for creative purposes to add tone and help with the flow. A lot of these are transitional sounds like whooshes, and some of them are more atmospheric sounds like drones, just long abstract tracks that add an atmosphere. I also like to use certain other atmospheric sounds, like I like to use this sun flare sound effect when I have a light on screen, other things like that. There's really no rules here. These are all completely abstract and just depend on what you want to use creatively. So have some fun with it. Once I've got all of my sounds on the timeline, I'll move on to adding some filters and effects to change them and make them sound a little different. And this is once again something that kind of contributes to that atmosphere and flow. There are a bunch of different filters and techniques at your disposal, but I have a few that I use on pretty much every project. The first of which is just speed, changing up the speed of a sound effect to make it sound a little different. I also have a few filters I use pretty frequently, like low pass, which can give you this muffled effect, high pass, which can give you kind of like a radio or TV type sound, and reverb, which just adds a lot of extra echo and reverberation to the sound. Those are the 4 effects I use most frequently, and I've talked about them in the previous sound design videos, which you can once again watch by clicking right up here and learn about those effects and filters in more detail. And now the final step in this process, mixing, ensuring that everything throughout the timeline is balanced. Essentially, nothing is too loud or too soft. This is a tricky part of the process because there is no right answer. Like, how loud should your music be? How loud should your voiceover be? How loud should your sound effects be? I don't know. As a general rule of thumb, I give priority to the voiceover, making sure, first of all, that you can hear the voiceover clearly. If that means lowering down the music, lowering down the sound effects, that's okay. Because if the voiceover can't be heard clearly, then that is going to impact the actual story and the viewer's understanding of the video. And that's not okay. My videos also tend to get a little louder towards the end. Like, I gradually get more and more carried away and just up the volume a little more as I go through the sound design. So I end up just skipping through and making sure that the volume overall is consistent throughout. And if it's super loud in one part of the video, just bring that down so that you're not annoying your viewer. A useful tool for sound mixing is the master volume control, which basically just allows you to adjust the volume of your entire timeline, and that's useful for making sure that your audio isn't too loud and that you don't end up with peaking audio in your export. And this is another thing that I talked about in detail in the previous videos, which you can watch right up there and learn about it in a little more depth. But beyond that, when I'm deciding on the volume of the music throughout the video, the volume of different sound effects, I kind of just have to feel it out, just play it through a million times, tweak the volume of different effects, and see what sounds right. But there's no magical rule, like your voiceover should be this loud, your music should be this many decibels, your sound effects should be this many, and that's kind of how it goes for everything in sound design. Sound is literally just a bunch of like little differently shaped waves that tickle your ears a certain way. It makes no sense at all. It's completely abstract, and it can be literally anything under the sun. And that's what's cool about it. It's abstract and it can be whatever you want it to be. So rather than getting overwhelmed by that, because it can be a little overwhelming, try to embrace it and have a good time with it, because it really is just a whole fishbowl of creative opportunities. Fishbowl, is that an expression? I don't think that's a figure of speech at all, but I was kind of going off the dome there. That was a long take. I was getting a little winded, so hopefully you understood what I meant. But anyway, that's the video. I hope you enjoyed it, learned something new from it, and also enjoyed this 3-part series overall. Once again, a big thank you to Epidemic Sound for sponsoring this entire project. Just a reminder, you can use that link in the description of this video to get a 30-day free trial of either a personal or commercial plan. I really cannot recommend it enough, especially considering that it's completely free. Thank you for tuning into these videos. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one, and I'll see you there.